So good day everyone, we are the group 5. Today we will discuss accounting equation, but before that, let me introduce the members. So first, we have first reporter we have Jean Pingus Daroy. Second reporter we have Angelica Caimo. Third reporter we have Giselle Puntillas, and the last one, yours truly, Carlos Lalag. So let's start with the accounting equation with Jean Pingus Daroy.
The accounting equation. In accounting, it is understood that every business activity always has two-sided effect on the business. This two-sided effect is the best illustrated in the accounting equation, which states that the asset of the business entity should always be equal to the business total capital added to its total liabilities of its suppliers. Thus, assets is equals to liabilities plus capital. So, mo ni siya ang two-sided effect on the business. The assets is equals to liabilities plus the capital. Ang liabilities, i-add nimo siya sa capital. Ang result ato niya is equal sa assets. And then, ang total sa liabilities plus capitals is always good siya equal sa assets. So, assets. Assets are the present economic resource controlled by the entity. These are the economic resources belongings to a business. Then the liabilities. Liabilities are the debts owned by the firm or the present obligation of the entity. And then lastly is the capital. It is the value of the investment in the business by the owner. Value received is equal to value parted with. The amount of the value received will always equal with the amount of the value parted with. When transactions are being recorded, there also develop a related equations. So this is the formula: debit is equals to credit. So the value received is the debit, while the value parted with is the credit. Value parted with or the credit is always placed on the right side, while the value received or the debit will always place on the left side. Debit and credit serve as the two balancing aspects of every financial transactions in double entry bookkeeping. Debits are entered on the left side of a ledger and credits are entered on the right side of a ledger. Whether a debit increases or decreases an amount depends on what kind of amount it is. Credit is the ability to borrow money or access goods or services with the understanding that you'll pay later. Debits are the money going out of the account. They increase the balance of dividends, expenses, assets, and the losses. While the credits are the money coming into the account, they increase the balance of gains, incomes, revenues, liabilities, and the shareholders' equity. The amount entered on the debit side of an item's account will always have corresponding amount entered on the credit side of another item's account. Hence, the amount of debit will always equal to the amount of credit. Transactions affect the accounting values. The summary of changes in amount of these values are reflected in the principle of debit and credit. So, kung naay amount na ma-enter sa debit side, always siya naga-correspond sa credit sides. Kung pila pod ang amount na gi-enter sa debit side is maupod nga amount ang i-enter sa credit sides. Kay tungod ang amount ang amount sa debit side is always equal sa amount sa credit side. Liabilities and capitals are called equities, which means that business as a separate entity can be claimed of both the outside creditors and the proprietor himself. Hence, the accounting equation can also be stated as assets equals to equities. So, diri ang assets is equal na po siya sa equities. Ang equities is mo ni siya ang business as a separate entity. If the proprietor wants to know his proprietary interest in the business of, or if he wants to know how much is his claim over the assets of the business, the accounting equation is stated as assets minus the liabilities equals to capital. Kung ang proprietor sad is gusto siya makabalo kung pila ang iyahang proprietary interest sa business, ang iyang buhaton is ang iyahang assets is ang amount sa iyang assets is minusan niya sa amount sa liabilities. Then ang assets minus the liabilities, ang total amount niya is equal pud siya sa capital. Always pud siya equal sa amount sa capital. The equation will remind you of the information that a proprietor can get the balance sheet as what the business owns minus less the business owes equals what is left for the business, which stands for the capital and is the claim of the proprietor.
So hi, good day. Today we will discuss what are those equations to find assets, liabilities, and capital. So before that, let's first discuss to include the income and expenses as temporary account to summarize the changes of capital as a result of a transaction. The accounting equation is expanded and stated as follows. As you can see here, assets is equal to liabilities plus capital. So open parenthesis, drawing plus income minus expenses. So this is the equation. So the next one is there are some or many equations that are presented that might lead us to confusion. So a lot of equation that we use here to find assets, liabilities, and capital, but it is understandable and easy to find. As a beginner, bear in mind that the accounting equation which is stated as follows. So this is the equation that we must follow so that we can easily remember the equation when finding assets, liabilities, and capital. So assets is equal liabilities plus capital. So when finding assets, here is the equation. Asset is, so we need to find the assets here. So assets is equal to 450 plus 650. So here is the example. We need to find the assets. So the following number are given already. The liabilities here is 450,000. That is the liabilities that is already given. The capital is 650,000. So that is also given. So we need to find what is the assets. So in simple equation, we can use assets is equal liabilities plus capital. So we need to add liabilities plus capital. So in result, the assets is 1 million because the equation that we use here is addition, which is 450,000, the liabilities, plus capital 650,000 is equal to 1 million. That is the equation when finding, or formula in finding assets. The next one is example is we need to find liabilities. So in finding liabilities, the equation that we need to use is liabilities is equal to assets minus capital. So we are going to deduct or minus. So the given example here that is given is 1,500,000. That is the assets. And the capital here is 650,000. So assets minus capital is equal to liabilities, which is 150,000, 1,000,000 and 500,000 minus 650,000 is equal to here 850,000. That is the liabilities. That is very simple. The next one here, the equation that we use here is we need to find the capital. So the equation that we use is capital is equal to asset minus liabilities. So the following are given already. So the assets here is 6,900,000. As you can see here, it is already given. The liabilities is 2,500,000. That is also given already. So we need to find the result of what is the capital. So in simply, we need to deduct or minus the assets minus liabilities, which is 600,900,000 minus 2,500,000. So the result here is 4,400,000. That is the capital. So that is very simple in finding assets, liabilities, and capital. So we also discuss here what are the rules of debit and credit. So the accounting equation reflects the normal balance of the three accounting values as well as the temporary account of an owner's equity account. So the side positioning as adapted to effect the increase and decrease of the respective amounts can be gleaned further with the developed rules of debit, credit, which are stated as follows. So in finding capital asset and liabilities, this is very important, most especially in the entrepreneurs and businesses, so that malaman nila kung nalugi ba sila or what are those profit or na-gain nila na profit. Let's also discuss here what are the rules of debit in credit. So in rule number 1, in debit, increase an asset, while in credit, decrease an asset. So it's like a vice versa. So rule number 2, decrease a liability, while in credit, increase a liability. So same like a vice versa, decrease, increase, increase and decrease. And rule number 3, decrease a capital, while in credit, increase a capital. Rule number 4, increase a drawing, while in credit, decrease a drawing. Rule number 5, decrease an income, while in credit, increase an income. Rule number 6, here, number 6. And lastly, the application of the rules will be reported for the next report.
So, application of the rules. The following are selected transactions that are given to illustrate the application of the rules of debit and credit through side positioning. So, let me explain what is asset. So, asset is presented by the account as a cash. So, when we say cash, mo to tong sariling kwarta or what we own. Then, liability is presented by the accounts as accounts payable, which means what we owe to others, like ginatawag na to debt or utang, which we owe to a certain person or in a company na ginabayaran na to. And next is capital, which is the example of Mrs. Rosario Salva, na ma-explain na to siya sa the next slide sa iyahang mga transaction. So when we say capital, it is represent as the resources invested by the owners in the entity. So when we say entity, it is somewhat na ginadescribe na to siya as a collection sa mga assets or the sum total of the assets. The next is drawing. So as for example, which is Mrs. Salva na po na ma-explain to iyang transaction as the next slide. So, when we say drawing, mo ni ang mga withdrawals taken by the owners or iyahang gina-withdraw to a certain business or sa iyahang mismong business. And the next is income that represented by the account as is service income. So, kabalatan sa ng income, no, kanang mga mahali na to or ma-income na to sa tuang business. The next is expense that represent by the account as office supplies expense. So, mga expense ka na mga magasto na to or like mga rent na mga deduct siya sa tuang assets. So, this is the transaction of Mrs. Salva, where Mrs. Salva made an initial investment of 10,000 cash. So, the analysis is debit, cash of 10,000 and credit of Mrs. Salva and a capital of 10,000. So, the rule of it is debit increase in asset and credit increase in owner's equity. So, as you can see, it shows the chart as a T accounts. So, it is called T accounts because it represents the individual accounts through debit and credit. And actually, ang T account is dahil siya gamitin because more on mag-addition and subtract ra kaani because it present visually. It presented the debit and credit of the owner's account. So, as we can see in this T account, which is in the above, is cash. So, in cash, it have a debit and credit. So, Mrs. Silva invested at 10,000. So, nagpasulod siya kwarta, which is mabutang siya sa debit. Kaya napasulod man siya kwarta. And pag-abot sa ubos is capital of Mrs. Salva. So, nagpasulod siya kwarta sa debit and then nabutang siya sa credit it because nag-investment siya. So, mo na siya nabutang siya, ang iyang 10,000 is nabutang siya sa credit kaya nag-investment siya. Mo na iyang capital. Note the effect wherein cash account of cash was debited and the amount of 10,000 was entered on the increase side, which is in its normal balance of being an asset account. Wherein owner's equity account was Mrs. Salva capital was credited and the amount of 10,000 was entered on the increase side, which is in its normal balance being an owner's equity account. So, kaya napasulod man siya kwarta, sumabutang siya sa credit and mo-increase siya kay nag-investment siya. So, the transaction 2 of Mrs. Salva is Mrs. Salva made an additional investment of 15,000 cash. So, the analysis is debit cash of 15,000 and credit Mrs. Salva and a capital of 15,000. The rule is debit increase in an asset and credit and increase in owner's equity. So, as we can see in the chart is that Mrs. Salva added 50,000. So, kay nagbutang man siya kwarta, masunod na po siya sa debit. So, kay ang katong iyahang isud nga 10,000 before is wala man siya nakuhaan. So, then giada na siya 15,000. I-total na mo siya, which is equivalent to 25,000. And then kay ang katong 15,000 is gi-invest man po to niya. So, maadto siya sa credit kay gi-investment to niya. So, overall, ang iyahang credit sa investment is 25,000. The note effect of E is that cash account was further debited and the amount of 15,000 was entered on the increase side, which had increased in the amount of 25,000. So, the amount of 15,000 was positioned at the positive side of the accounts affect the increase. So, the owner's equity is that the account of Mrs. Salva capital was further credited and the amount of 15,000 was entered on the increase side, which had increased the amount of capital of 25,000. So the amount of 15,000 was positioned at the positive side of the account to affect the increase. Okay. ni-increase siya it because wala man nadidakan iyahang 10,000 nga first niya nga gisulod. So then gi-add nimo siya nimo siya 25,000.
Okay, let's proceed to the transaction number 3, where Mrs. R. Salva made a cash withdrawal of 2,000. So here is the analysis. Debit R. Salva drawing of 2,000 and credit cash of 2,000. Here is the rule of debit and credit. So debit, decrease in owner's equity, increase in drawing, and credit, decrease in asset. So since si Mrs. R. Salva nag-withdraw man siya, so gibutang nato pud siya sa increase side of debit, where gi-minus nato siya sa 25,000 na total nga gi-invest ni R. Salva. So ang nahibili na lang is 23,000. At the same time, we put 2,000 in the decrease side sa cash, which is the asset. Then R. Salva capital, 'di ba, sa rule number 3, we debit decrease a capital o we credit to increase a capital. So diri siya gibutang sa increase side, which is wala siya gibutangan og minus 2,000 kay lahi sila og kanang asa sila mag-increase, asa sila mag-decrease. So gilahi siya og box, which is didto gibutang si 2,000 sa R. Salva drawing, which is gibutang siya sa increase side of debit. Mao na siya. Then here is the note. So note the effect. Cash account. Cash was credited in the amount of 2,000, was entered on the decrease side, which had decreased the amount of cash balance to 23,000. So gimaynusan man siya 2,000, ang 25,000 na total nga gi-invest ni R. Salva, so 23,000 na lang. The amount of 2,000 was positioned at the negative side to effect the decrease. So owner's equity. So when we say owner's equity, the account or the 2,000 reduction of capital was shown in another account. Kaya di siya pwede isagol dito sa katong sa rule number 3 nga ang capital decrease in debit but increase in credit na siya. Then drawing and not on the decrease side of the R. Salva capital. Di siya pwede ibutang dito sa decrease side sa R. Salva capital. While the capital account is positioned as a credit to effect the decrease, the capital of R. Salva had been decreased to what? 23,000. So, ang capital na lang ni R. Salva ay 23,000 kay since nag-withdraw man siya og 2,000. Now, we have the transaction number 4. Mrs. R. Salva made another cash withdrawal of 3,000. So, nagkuha na po siya, nag-withdraw na po siya another 3,000 daw. So, here is the analysis. Credit R. Salva drawing of 3,000 in credit cash of 3,000. So, here is the rule. Debit, decrease in owner's equity, increase in drawing. In credit, decrease in asset. Same sa katong transaction number 3, gibutang nato siya sa decrease side of credit kato sa asset, gi-add nato siya which is 5,000. Ang 5,000 mao na ang total of drawing ni R. Salva kung pila na tanan iyahang gi-withdraw. While this increase side, gimaynusan na pud nato ang 23,000 ug 3,000, nahimo na lang siya og what? 20,000. Then diri sa R. Salva, same lang gyapon sa increase side of debit since lahi og account katong sa drawing ni R. Salva. So makita nato diri R. Salva drawing increase side of debit, which is gi-add lang nato ang total of unang gi-drawing or gi-withdraw ni R. Salva nga 2,000 plus katong next nga gi-withdraw ni R. Salva. So which is 5,000 ang total niya nga gi-withdraw. Cash account. cash was further credited and the amount of 3,000 was entered on the decrease side. So, the 3,000 increased the total amount of the credit side to 5,000. So, mao na ang total nga gi-withdraw ni Arsalva, which is 5,000. Well, the total amount of the debit side was 25,000. Kay mao man na ang total nga gi-invest katong initial o katong another nga gi-invest ni Arsalva, which is mo total og 25,000. In effect, the balance of cash account had been decreased to 20,000 since nag-withdraw man si Arsalva og 5,000 total na siya. So ang iyang cash account na lang is 20,000 na lang. So ang owner's equity account, the 3,000 was entered on the increase side of drawing account, which means that the increase in drawing account will further decrease the balance of owner's equity. So kung drawing account, mo decrease jud ang ang owner's equity or ang katong kapital or katong gi-invest ni Arsalva. So, as they are in the opposite position, the drawing account had increased its balance to 5,000. Which result to further decrease in owner's equity account from 23,000 to 20,000. So first nga gi-withdraw ni Arsalva 2,000, ang 25,000 nahimo na lang 23,000. Plus nag-add pa jud siya og nagkuha pa jud siya, nag-withdraw pa jud siya 3,000. So ang 23,000 karon nahimo na lang 20,000. So ang balance account na lang or ang balance of cash account na lang karon is 20,000. So, i-sum up na to or unsay mga summary, unsay kanang katang in total sa transaction number 1, 2, 3, 4. Kung makuan ba nato, kung ma-equalize ba nato or equal ba si credit o debit ana. So, here is mao ni siya ang balance in amount. Mao ni na ang balance sheet ron. So, sa cash asset, mao ning debit increase and credit increase. So, sa debit increase, we have 25,000 which is the total asset. Og at the same time, dara Arsalva Capital, makita ninyo na Arsalva Capital owners equity 25,000 which is mao na ang total nga gi-put or gi-invest ni Arsalva dito. While the credit entries, since diba sa asset is ang rule niya increase an asset which is the 25,000, but we credit to decrease an asset. Unsay nakapa-decrease sa asset? Katong mga gi-drawing, katong mga gi-withdraw ni Arsalva nga katong 2,000 og 3,000, a total of 5,000 mao na siya. So 25,000 minus 5,000, it is equal to 20,000. Mao na lang ni diri sa balance in amount. Ang debit niya karon is 20,000 na lang, mao na iyang balance account. So, this sa Arsalva Capital, we have 25,000 which is katong total amount of capital ni Arsalva. And we have the Arsalva drawing or katong iyang gi-withdraw which is a total of 5,000. So, here is now i-total na nato. So, 25,000 plus 5,000 is equal to 30,000. On the credit entries, we have 5,000 plus 25,000, 3,000. Look at these two green boxes. Kini. Diba? 30,000, 30,000. So, it means equal si debit entries o si credit entries. So, as what I have said earlier, nga dapat i-balance jud si credit o debit. So, in balance in amount, so si 20,000, i-add nato siya sa 25,000, nahimo siya 25,000. Look at this orange kining sa total nga line. Diba? 25,000. And sa credit, we have 25,000. Mao na siya ang total nga ag-invest ni Arsalva or mao nang owner's equity which is 25,000. So, it means balance si 25,000 og si credit. Diba? Si debit, balance siya ni credit. So, dili siya pwede nga musobra, di siya pwede mukulang. It should be equal to each other. So, that's our report regarding for this accounting equation. Hope you have learned something in our report. Thank you and God bless us all.